Bloodthirsty Trilogy is the name given to three Japanese horror films, all shot in the 1970s and all directed by Michio Yamamoto. These three films were made with inspiration from the lush, gothic, technicolor atmosphere of Hammer horror films of the 50s and 60s. I had heard of the Bloodthirsty Trilogy for a while, but didn't have access to a print until Arrow put out its Blu-ray collection of all three films. I received it as a Christmas present in 2018, and in a rare sweep, I ended up loving each one of these unique vampire tales. The Vampire Doll, aka Legacy of Dracula, 1970. The only entry in the Bloodthirsty Trilogy that doesn't have Dracula. Think of it like Brides of Dracula. A man who has returned from abroad goes to visit his girlfriend Yuko after she doesn't respond to his telegram. When he gets to her home, he meets her mother, Nomura, who tells him that Yuko recently died in a car accident. But later that night, he actually sees Yuko. We're suddenly introduced to the man's sister, Kiko, who has just woken up from a perceptive nightmare. We are also introduced to her boyfriend, Hiroshi. This is probably a good time to point out that prevalent throughout the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, and despite great gothic atmosphere, all three films occasionally remind us that at this time, this was set in modern day. The reluctant villagers are replaced by a lone gas station attendant who doesn't mind telling them everything. When they arrive at the last known whereabouts of Kiko's brother, Nomura tells them that he's already left, and conveniently, their car breaks down, so they must stay the night. Kiko sees Yuko. And Hiroshi comes to her aid. They leave the next day. Kiko and Hiroshi also visit the doctor who wrote Yuko's death certificate. Kiko returns to the house that day. Meanwhile, Hiroshi digs up Yuko's grave to find... But the real Yuko isn't far behind. Hiroshi runs to the chateau to confront Nomura and save his girlfriend. Despite being the only film in the trilogy devoid of Dracula, The Vampire Doll seems to be the entry with the best gothic atmosphere and the best pacing. There's a fair amount of misdirection and even a couple twists, but I think The Vampire Doll's strength lies in its ability to marry gothic with mystery and suspense. While being dazzled by the Mario Bava-like cinematography, we're with the main characters every step of the way while they're trying to figure out what happened to Kiko's brother and the mystery surrounding Yuko's death. While I appreciate all three entries in the series, after my most recent rewatch, it's possible that for now, we consider this one the best in the series. Lake of Dracula, 1971. Lake of Dracula, while having a similar sense of autumnal atmosphere and vivid color, is not a sequel to The Vampire Doll. In this film, a little girl dreams of a vampire with golden eyes. "18 years later, Akiko is now a school teacher who has just witnessed a mysterious crate arrive. We meet her sister Natsuko, who seems to take great pleasure in agitating her sister, particularly about her boyfriend, a doctor named Takashi.
お姉さん、いつまでもそんな夢物語に夢中になってると、彼私が取っちゃうわよ。
Meanwhile,
ねえねえ、夏子の卒論のテーマ、女の深層心理についてってのどうかしら。
なっちゃんねえ、もしかしたらあの子あなたのこと好きなんじゃないかしら。
え
Akiko meets Dracula again.
久作さんは。
As the flashbacks get more and more intense,
あれはあの
the doctor has a patient that comes in with bite marks on her neck.
君、この患者の倒れていた場所は
富士見湖の近くです。
富士見湖。
With the help of a new manservant, Dracula has Akiko brought to him. But is saved by some boating enthusiasts.
なんだ、いるんじゃねえか。
船貸してくれんかね。
いないのよ、うちに。
Akiko gets home to ring up her boyfriend, but has discovered that Natsuko is now missing. Oh good, there she is. Nothing to see here. Back at the hospital, Takashi's new patient stretches her legs. Security tries to help. Akiko later sees her sister wander into the woods, but appears later like everything's fine and midnight strolls are just her thing.
ごちそうさま。朝から店作られちゃかなわないな。なっちゃん。
Takashi begins exploring the link between the death of his patient and what's happening to Akiko, and is refreshingly supportive.
それじゃ私の話信じてくださるの？
バカだな。僕が君を気違い扱いすると思うのか。
They confront Dracula's new servant.
誰なの？
ご主人だ、ほら。
どこかでお食事しません？
いや、そいつはいいな。あ、久しぶりにステーキでも。
Takashi gets a fake call into work, allowing Natsuko to reveal to Akiko her new master.
何をびっくりしてんの、お姉さん。ゆうべ湖の近くでお目にかかったの。ご挨拶にいらしたのよ。
Dracula particularly likes Akiko's painting of the eye.
幻想画としても一級品です。
Meanwhile, Takashi, while being called into work is bad enough, is almost murdered but seemingly saved by divine intervention?
立派なお姉さん。頭が良くて綺麗で。
Trying to escape the count, Akiko hides in an upstairs closet. The room's mirror is hardly a reliable indicator that she's alone. Takashi arrives home and uses hypnosis to verify Akiko's old memory of Dracula when she was young. And strangely enough, sibling resentment also boils to the surface.
それで。
確かになっちゃんは心の底では君を憎んでいたかもしれない。
Timing probably isn't impeccable, but Natsuko isn't that easy to get rid of. Takashi believes the key to defeating Dracula is to travel back to Akiko's hometown, following her vision from years ago and entering the castle scene in her dreams. It's possible Lake of Dracula is my least remembered entry, even though I've seen it just as much as the other two films. Of the three, it's the least violent, gothic, and scary, save for Dracula's demise where he's decomposing and screeching in terror. That's not to say there isn't atmosphere, there's loads. I especially like how a body of water is what links Kiko's interactions with Dracula. It does remind me a bit of Taste the Blood of Dracula, as it does feel like Dracula is shoehorned into the story. But Yamamoto's films seem more cohesive, well thought out, and inventive. Even just 2 films in, you could see in a very Hammer manner that some actors were being reoccurringly cast in different roles. Hammer was pretty well known for that. So far, they're pretty much in that Michael Ripper type of supporting role. Evil of Dracula, 1974. In Evil of Dracula, we follow Professor Shiraki, who is on his way to teach at an all-girls school. When he arrives, he immediately goes to the principal's house and learns that his wife has passed away just 2 days ago.
ようこそ。
Remind you of anyone?
うちの古い習慣でね。
The principal tells Shiraki that he wants him to succeed him as principal of the school because he's ill and looking to move on. Right off the bat, we get into it.
するとあれは夢だったのか。死んでる。するとあれはやっぱり夢か。何をしている。
Not off to a great start between these two.
悲しみを込めて死者の眠りを邪魔してはならない。二度とここに来てはならん。絶対にな。
The next day, Shiraki meets some students early on and learns it's not uncommon for students to just
毎年
disappear.
1人や2人はいるんですよ。蒸発しちゃう生徒が。毎年ですか。
Shiraki attempts to piece together the mystery of the missing girls and the vampire woman he saw in his dream, and helps some of the students who may have a little crush on him.
先生、例えば私が先生を愛してるとしたら、そういう感情もテストに現れるんでしょうか。
それはどうかな。
But time is of the essence as this year's student body is already in danger. Consistent with the rest of the series, there are some very interesting concepts applied here, such as the origins of Dracula. Long ago, a white Christian man emerges from a shipwreck. Because Christianity is outlawed, he is tortured and forced to renounce his religion. He flees into the desert and there, dying of thirst, opens up his wrist and drinks his own blood, becoming the demon vampire Dracula, and eventually uses his newly found powers to take a bride.
そしてどのような悪魔の力によってか少女は蘇った。
Just like Lake of Dracula, Shin Kashida is the actor who plays Dracula, which seems to be the only continuity between the films. Just like how a lake is used to connect Dracula's victim in Lake of Dracula, a white rose with fairly sharp thorns seems to signal Dracula's next victim. Out of all 3, this one feels the most horror of Dracula. You have someone coming to Dracula's home like Harker as the librarian, only to become an adversary later, and there's a huge emphasis on Dracula securing a female companion. The counts in both films, while maintaining just the right amount of hospitality to appear human, have a more insidious and animalistic nature hidden under the surface of their intentions. Just like Christopher Lee's greatest moments in horror Dracula, the Dracula here feels visceral and powerful. While I recommend all 3 entries, I'd say Evil of Dracula is the most accessible film for classic horror fans who want the closest thing to another Hammer classic. Random Blu-ray purchases, particularly with box sets, usually leave me desiring a more consistent product. But when I first watched the Bloodthirsty Trilogy, I was delighted to discover 3 Gothic horror gems. Each entry can stand on its own, and though continuity isn't a huge thing with these films, even less than Hammer was, they all have a similar style, inventiveness, and rustic coziness. For those who love curling up with a blanket in their favorite horror film, while harpsichords and thunderstorms crescendo to a bone-chilling climax, these films aren't to be missed. Thank you all for watching. Have you seen any of the films in the Bloodthirsty Trilogy or have ideas for a future video? Let me know in the comments below. Until then, thank you, and I'll catch you guys next time.